It does seem like celebrity culture and media culture, for that matter, in the US is pretty shallow, and it's simply focusing on promoting whatever is the next hot thing. There's not much interest, respect, or appreciation for real cultural history. Now, I knew of Gloria Steinem before, but I actually needed to do a quick little Google search to find out exactly what she did to improve career opportunities for women in America. Now, Gloria Steinem is a pretty impressive woman. I think she's the real thing when it comes to feminism. And I'm guessing Meghan had not heard of her until after she dragged her royal image back to Hollywood and needed an alter ego. I'm sure she had to Google impressive US feminists when she was editing Vanity Fair's Women of Substance, and Gloria Steinem, of course, showed up in the search. And was that not about the same time that Meghan started going on and on about dishwashing branding with Procter and Gamble? I did some research into US property management, and I found out that it's pretty much standard practice for landlords in America to give a tenant a dishwasher in their rental property, along with all kinds of other electrical appliances too, dating all the way back to 1980, before Meghan was born, or so she claims. I'm not sure that anybody had to scrub pots any longer, and non-stick pots and pans have been around actually since the 60s. I still remember back in the 60s when my auntie got her first Teflon pan. Now, my mama has always been devoted to iron skillets, but my aunt decided she wanted to try out this new non-stick Teflon, and it cleaned up so nicely with a non-abrasive sponge. Of course, you had to be careful not to overheat the thing, but it seemed pretty revolutionary at the time. And we already know what really happened with that story with the Procter& Gamble dishwashing ad. That was something the whole class pitched in on. And the true hero was the teacher. It wasn't Meghan Markle. And that woman has been gone for a long time. I don't know where she is. I assume she's still living, but she lives under the radar. Anyway, I do not believe for a second that Meghan Markle really knows the history of the women's rights movement. She probably couldn't even tell you what a real suffragette is. Now, obviously, somebody told Meghan it would be better if she didn't show up to the Gracie Awards, considering all the bad publicity that came from their trip to New York. And as for Gloria Steinem, well, who really knows what she actually thinks about Meghan? I've seen some people online giving her a hard time about stuff she wore in the 70s, which I don't agree with at all. I mean, she was making a really important statement there. Now, the most famous suffragettes throughout history haven't cared a bit about fashion trends. Instead, they chose to identify themselves by their commitment to dressing to suit their personal taste, their comfort, to make their body shapes look good, and forget about the retail fashion giants. Meghan, did you hear that? From what I've read, Gloria Steinem is absolutely horrified that Meghan stole the show and basically markled her by taking all the attention away from her causes. So Gloria Steinem ended up losing out for her charities, and she's probably not going to forgive Meghan so easily. It definitely was a case of bribery and corruption. And I'm not sure precisely how vulnerable Gloria Steinem really is. I have read that she may be suffering from dementia, so it could be that she was just an innocent exploited by Meghan Markle. As we already know, Meghan Markle loves to go after people who have fragile minds. Harry is a great example. Typically, nepotism occurs in families, and I don't believe that Gloria Steinem is related to Meghan, so I do not believe this is a case of nepotism. But it is just appalling that Meghan is allowed to continually buy these awards for herself. And I do wonder, who are these powerful people who are in a position to sell these awards to Meghan? Do they just not care about all the damage that's being done to their foundations because they're associating with somebody like Meghan Markle? At the event, I couldn't help but notice that Gloria did look frail, and she wasn't dressed very well either. Now, these awards are absurd. Meghan takes money out of the Archwell Foundation to pay for these awards. She's a vulture. She goes after older people. Just look at how she went after Gordon Getty. It was awful. And his family knew exactly what she was up to, so of course they put a stop to her little game. Since becoming a teen, Meghan has been throwing her arms around older men, been sitting on their laps trying to get whatever she can out of them. She is such a nasty piece of work. And I wouldn't be surprised if Gloria got some kind of kickback. Perhaps it was money in her foundation that she could use for administrative purposes, like maybe buying herself some decent clothes instead of having to wear those old bell bottoms from the 70s. Now, Meghan knows all about nepotism. She knows about corruption. She is an expert in bribery, and especially exploitation. Meghan actually should do a podcast series on that. At least she knows something about it already. She could call it How to Be a Devious Con Artist 101. She is like a snake, though, just wrapping herself around people who don't know any better. It's much the same way that she got Harry. And Gloria Steinem, I don't think, has ever cared about artificially making herself look better. That, after all, was the credo of feminists of her generation. They didn't care anything about high couture, and they certainly didn't care a thing about plastic surgery or going to the salon or getting fillers or any of that nonsense. Now, she is elderly, and it could be that she's trying to wear the style of her youth as some type of badge of honor. After all, why would she care about fashion now? She never did before. I do still believe that Gloria Steinem is the real deal, so I think if she knew what Meghan Markle was all about, she wouldn't want to have anything to do with her. I'm a little worried that maybe she didn't move with the times. That could explain the fashion statement. Maybe she simply does not understand the poor influence and example that Meghan is selling. Meghan's speech was absolutely disgusting, though. I mean, so self congratulatory, very limited acknowledgement of other people. And why would anybody give Meghan an award for the work that she did on Archetypes? I mean, that whole podcast series was so stupid. She shamed the women she interviewed. She insulted their stories by trying to one up them every single time. That does not deserve an award. On that stupid podcast series of hers, Meghan really showed how ignorant she really is. She only cares about making herself look good. She doesn't care about other people, and nobody should congratulate her for that work. I mean, come on. Gloria Steinem, please, just start ignoring Meghan Markle. I know that you got Markle, but it's time to move on. And most people in the US had never heard Meghan Markle's name before she met Harry. I mean, then they did the Oprah interview, and of course, Meghan's stupid blog existed, but nobody knew about her from that blog. I would guess that most people view her as a self absorbed narcissist. She ghosted her ex husband, she ghosted her father, she ghosted so many of her friends. She's alienated Harry from his entire family and his friends too. And New Yorkers, for what it's worth, absolutely loathe her. She can't get hired anywhere in Hollywood. No one wants to work with her. Now, there are millions of Americans, and I know millions of different opinions, but still, I think most people do not care for her. Most people don't agree with throwing one's family under the bus and talking trash about them. Now, many Americans actually do know how to think for ourselves. Most Americans realize that you cannot believe everything the media puts out. But I'm afraid that as long as the media keeps putting out nonsensical stories and people keep buying these stories and putting it all over the internet, Meghan is still going to be relevant. Princess Diana actually did many of the same things that Harry and Meghan have been up to lately. She tried to understand the actions of a family that had a lot of problems. Diana exposed the wrongdoings, and just look at what happened to her. And until Meghan made this big deal of being biracial, nobody in the UK even noticed, and certainly nobody cared. I mean, there are plenty of Southern Europeans who have the same skin tone. And you know what? In London, people do not care about skin color anyway. It's all down to the person's behavior, the person's attitude. That is what people care about. The tradition started when the royal ladies started having their babies in hospitals, and all of the queen's children were born in the palace. So she and her sister were born at their parents' homes, and so on and so forth. The problem people have believing that this child was born to Meghan at all was because of the absurd circus that Meghan made of it. There are some people who believe the children are really theirs, but even most of those people believe that Meghan and Harry did use surrogates. It is about time for the truth to come out, that's all I know. And you, do you agree with the views in my video? If yes, don't be afraid to like and share it with anyone else who needs it. If not, let us know the reason, and we can also talk about Meghan Markle.